Why do you think the people who hurt you the most always seem so calm? It's not because they don't feel anything. It's because they've learned something you haven't. Feelings are information, not instructions. You think anger means you have to yell. You think fear means you have to run. You think sadness means something's wrong with you. But what if all of that is backwards? What if your emotions are just messengers and you keep shooting the messenger? I'm going to show you how to read the message instead, how to stop being controlled by what you feel and start being informed by it. This isn't about becoming cold, it's about becoming clear. You've been lied to about emotions your entire life. You've been told to stay positive, to let it go, to not take things personally. And where has that gotten you? You're exhausted. You're reactive. You feel like a stranger in your own mind. Here's the truth. No one's saying, your emotions aren't the problem. Your relationship with them is. I know what it's like to stand on a battlefield where one wrong move, one moment of rage, 1 second of fear-driven hesitation can cost thousands of lives. I know what it's like to feel anger so pure it could level cities, and to have to hold it, to understand it, to use it as fuel instead of letting it burn everything down. And what I learned is that the people who win, not just battles, but life, aren't the ones who don't feel. They're the ones who feel everything and then choose what to do with it. The weak man is ruled by his emotions. The fool tries to kill his emotions. But the wise man, he listens, he learns, and then he chooses. And that choice, that tiny sacred moment of choice between feeling something and doing something, is the only real freedom you'll ever have. Let me tell you a story. There was a young general I knew, brilliant strategist, fierce warrior. 3 days before a major battle, a rival general publicly humiliated him in front of the entire court, called him a coward, questioned his honor. It was designed to wound, and it did. I watched this young general's face turn red. I watched his fists clench. His advisors were reaching for their swords, waiting for his signal. The entire room was holding its breath, and he did nothing. He looked at his rival, took one long, slow breath, and said, "Thank you for your perspective." Then he walked out. Everyone was confused. They thought maybe he'd lost his courage, but I knew better. For the next 3 weeks, while everyone expected retaliation, this general studied his enemy. He watched how that rival operated, how he made decisions, what patterns he followed. And he realized something crucial. That insult wasn't random. It was strategic. The rival knew this general was hot-headed when provoked, and the insult was designed to make him attack prematurely, to throw off his timing. The insult was a trap. And by not taking the bait, by feeling that rage fully but choosing not to obey it, he avoided the trap. When the actual battle came, he struck with perfect timing and ended the entire war in a single day. Not because he was emotionless, because he understood the difference between feeling something and being controlled by something. After it was over, I asked him how he didn't react in that moment. He said something I've never forgotten. I realized that my first feeling is not my wisest counselor. My first feeling is my most honest counselor, yes. It tells me the truth of what I'm experiencing. But wisdom requires a second step. Wisdom requires asking, what does this feeling want me to do? And is that actually what I should do? That distinction is everything. Your first feeling is honest. It's real. It's valid. But it's not always wise. And the space between that first feeling and your response to it, that's where all your power lives. Think about your emotions like a river. a powerful river, full of energy and force. When that river floods, it destroys everything in its path. That's what uncontrolled emotion looks like. But imagine that same river with canals, with banks that direct the water. Now, instead of destroying a village, that river powers it. It turns mills. It irrigates fields. The same water, the same power, but completely different outcome. Your anger is that river. Your fear is that river. And right now, you're either letting them flood and destroy things, or you're trying to build a dam and hold them back completely until the pressure builds and the dam breaks. But there's a third option. Build the canal. Learn the nature of what you're feeling. Understand where it comes from and what it's trying to protect. And then direct it. Channel it. Use it. Nobody tells you this. Modern advice about emotions gets it completely backwards. They tell you to get rid of negative emotions, to think positive, to let go. And so you spend all this energy fighting yourself, and you still lose. But what if you're not supposed to win that war? What if the war itself is the mistake? What if your emotions aren't the enemy that needs to be defeated, but intelligence agents that need to be debriefed? Every emotion you feel is trying to tell you something. It's trying to protect you, to warn you, to prepare you, to guide you. But it speaks in a language most people never learn to understand. When anger shows up, you think it's telling you to yell, to destroy. But that's not what it's actually saying. Anger is saying, a boundary has been crossed, or something I value is being threatened, or I feel powerless and I need to reclaim my agency. Fear isn't saying, you're in danger, run away. Fear is saying, pay attention, something important is at stake here, or you need to prepare. Sadness isn't saying you're broken. Sadness is saying you've lost something that mattered, or something needs to change. The emotion is information. The reaction you've been taught is just one possible response to that information, and usually not even a good one. So the first step in mastering your emotions is learning to decode them accurately. Learning to ask, what is this feeling actually trying to tell me? Instead of just obeying the first impulse it generates. Let me tell you about a practice I do every single morning. Before I do anything else, I sit quietly for just 60 seconds and ask myself one question. What am I feeling right now? Not what I think I should be feeling. What am I actually feeling? And I name it. Sometimes it's simple. Sometimes it's complex. I'm feeling a knot of anxiety mixed with excitement, mixed with irritation. And here's the crucial part. I don't try to fix it. I don't judge myself for feeling it. I just name it. I just acknowledge it. That simple act changes everything, because most people don't even know what they're feeling until it's already controlling them. When you get specific, when you can say, I'm not just anxious, I'm feeling vulnerable because I have to show my work to someone whose opinion matters to me. And beneath that fear is a deeper fear that maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Now you're working with real information. Now you can ask useful questions. This is what I mean by emotional vocabulary being a weapon. Most people operate with maybe 5 emotion words: happy, sad, angry, scared, fine. That's like trying to paint a masterpiece with 5 colors. You need to expand your emotional vocabulary. Learn the difference between anger and resentment and frustration and rage. The more precisely you can name what you're feeling, the more power you have over it. Because here's what happens when you can name something precisely. It becomes an object you can examine instead of a force that controls you. When you just feel bad, that's overwhelming. But when you can say, I'm feeling dismissed, that's specific. That's something you can work with. And this brings me to something paradoxical. You gain control by surrendering the need to control. Most people, when they feel something uncomfortable, try to make it stop. And that impulse actually makes it stronger. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push, the more force it pushes back with. But when you stop trying to control it, when you just let it be there and observe it, something interesting happens. It stops being this overwhelming force and becomes just sensation and thought. You realize this is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. I can feel this without being destroyed by it. And the moment you realize that, it starts to lose its power over you. So let me ask you something. What would happen if you just let yourself feel what you're feeling? Not act on it, not let it run your life, but just feel it fully? What if the next time you felt angry, instead of exploding or suppressing it, you just said, I'm angry. This is what anger feels like in my body. My chest is tight. My jaw is clenched. I'm feeling it, and I'm not going to die from this. The feeling would peak. It would exist for a while, and then it would start to fade, because that's what feelings do when you're not feeding them with resistance. They rise, they peak, they fall, like waves, and you can learn to surf them instead of being drowned by them. But feeling your feelings is just the first step. After you feel it, after you name it, after you understand what it's trying to tell you, then you have to decide what to do with that information. And this is where the difference between reaction and response becomes critical. A reaction is automatic. It's unconscious. It's controlled by your past, by your conditioning. Someone says something that triggers you, and before you even think about it, you've snapped back. That's reaction. It's fast, it's unconscious, and it's usually not in your best interest. A response is different. A response is deliberate. It's conscious. Someone says something that triggers you, and you feel that spike of anger, and you notice it, and you take a breath, and you ask yourself, what would the strongest version of me do right now? And then you choose. That's response. It's slower, it's conscious, and it's almost always in your best interest. And the bridge between reaction and response is one simple thing. Pause. When you feel something intense, before you do anything, pause for 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. Take one breath. And in that breath, ask yourself, is this feeling giving me information, or is it taking my power? That's it. That's the whole practice. 2 seconds. One question. But if you do this consistently, it will change your entire life. Because what you're doing in those 2 seconds is creating space. You're widening the gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap, that's where your freedom lives. That's where choice lives. Let me give you a practical example. You're in a meeting and someone takes credit for your idea. You feel anger. That's automatic. The anger is information. It's telling you a boundary has been crossed. Something unfair has happened. That's useful information. Now you have a choice. You can react, which might look like immediately calling them out, making a scene. Or you can respond. You can feel the anger, acknowledge it, and then ask, what's the strategic move here? Maybe you calmly say, actually, that idea came from our brainstorming session last week. Maybe you talk to them privately after. The point is, you're using the information the anger gave you, but you're not being controlled by the anger. And here's what people don't realize. The response is actually more powerful than the reaction. When you react, people dismiss you as emotional, out of control. When you respond, people respect you. They see someone who has their emotions but isn't had by their emotions. Now, there's something else you need to understand. You have to learn to hold two awareness simultaneously. One part of you is feeling the emotion fully. The other part of you is observing the emotion. So when you're angry, one part of you is experiencing the heat, the tension. The other part is noticing, I am angry. My chest is hot. My jaw is tense. One is in the emotion. The other is watching the emotion. And when you can do both at the same time, you're no longer at the mercy of what you feel. This takes practice, but you can start today. The next time you feel something intense, try to split your awareness. Part of you feels it fully. Part of you watches it like you're a scientist observing something interesting. That observer part is your anchor. That's the part that can't be swept away. Let me tell you about another practice that's incredibly valuable. At the end of every day, spend 5 minutes reviewing your emotional responses. Ask yourself, when did I react today? When did I respond? What triggered me? What did I do well? What would I like to do differently tomorrow? Write this down, because writing forces clarity. When you review your day like this, you start to notice patterns. You start to see that certain people or situations consistently trigger certain emotions. And once you can see the pattern, you can prepare for it. That's strategic emotional management. And here's something that might surprise you. The more you practice this, the more you'll find that your emotions become less intense by default. Not because you're suppressing them, but because you're processing them in real time instead of accumulating them. Most people carry around years of unprocessed emotions. Every time something happens that they don't fully process, it gets added to the pile. And that pile creates constant emotional reactivity. But when you start feeling your emotions as they arise, naming them, understanding them, and processing them, you stop accumulating that backlog. And over time, your baseline emotional state becomes calmer. Not because you're becoming emotionless, but because you're current. You're not carrying yesterday's anger or last week's grief. You felt it, you learned from it, and you let it go. Now, I want to talk about the stories you tell about your emotions. Because emotions don't exist in isolation. They exist within narratives. And the narrative you tell about an emotion determines how much power it has over you. Let's say someone rejects you. You feel hurt. That's the emotion. But then you tell yourself a story. You might tell yourself, this hurt means I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. There's something wrong with me. Or you might tell yourself, this hurt means this particular connection wasn't aligned. I need to grieve this loss and stay open to other possibilities. Same emotion. Two completely different stories, and each story creates a completely different reality. One leads to shame and self-hatred. The other leads to healthy processing and resilience. The emotion is the same. The story is what makes the difference. So part of emotional mastery is becoming aware of the stories you're telling and asking, is this story true? Is it useful? Is it serving who I want to become? And if not, what's a different story I could tell that's equally true but more empowering? When you change the story, you change the emotion. If you interpret someone's behavior as a personal attack, you'll feel defensive. If you interpret the same behavior as them having a bad day, you'll feel compassion. The behavior didn't change. Your story changed, and that changed your emotional response. So start noticing the stories you tell, especially the ones that turn temporary situations into permanent identities. I failed versus I am a failure. I felt anxious versus I am an anxious person. One is an event, the other is an identity. And the story you choose determines which reality you create. Now, let me share something important about boundaries. One of the most important boundaries you can set with yourself is this: I will not make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. When you're angry, you don't quit your job or end your relationship. When you're afraid, you don't avoid everything. When you're sad, you don't make major life changes. You feel what you feel, you honor it, you let it inform you, and then you wait until you're in a more balanced state to make decisions. This is so important because so many people destroy their lives by making emotional decisions. They feel hurt and they burn a bridge. They feel scared and they turn down an opportunity. And then they have to live with consequences of decisions they made when they weren't thinking clearly. So create this rule. When I'm emotionally activated, I don't make decisions. I feel, I process, I wait. When I'm back to baseline, then I decide. Most regret comes from emotional decisions, from times when you let fear or anger or hurt make a choice for you. And you can't undo those choices. You can learn from them, but you can't undo them. So, the time to practice emotional mastery is now, before you make the next decision you can't take back. Let me distill everything into something you can use starting today. First, understand this. Emotions are information, not instructions. Every feeling is trying to tell you something, but it's not telling you what to do. That's your job. Second, practice the pause. Between feeling and action, insert space, even just 2 seconds. In that space, ask, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Third, develop your emotional vocabulary. Name what you're feeling with precision. Fourth, feel your emotions fully without obeying them blindly. Let yourself experience what you feel, but don't let it make your decisions. Fifth, examine the stories you tell about your emotions. Your interpretation creates your reality. Sixth, set boundaries with yourself. Don't make permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. And finally, be patient with yourself. This is hard work. You will fail. You will react when you meant to respond. And that's okay. What matters is that you keep practicing. Here's what I want you to understand. You came here feeling out of control, reactive, maybe ashamed of how you handle your emotions. And I want you to know that you are not broken. You are not too emotional. You are not weak. You have just never been taught how to work with your emotional nature instead of against it. Your emotions aren't your enemy. They never were. They were just trying to protect you the only way they knew how. But that war is over because now you know the truth. Feelings are data. Reactions are choices. And mastery is the space between the two. You don't have to fight yourself anymore. You don't have to be afraid of what you feel. You just have to learn the language your emotions speak and respond with wisdom instead of impulse. And here's what will happen when you do this work consistently. Situations that used to derail you completely will just become momentary challenges. You'll recover from emotional hits much faster. People will start treating you with more respect because they can sense your groundedness. You'll make better decisions. Your relationships will improve. You'll have more energy. And most importantly, you'll like yourself more. So here's my promise to you. If you practice what I've shared with you today, you will transform. Not overnight. Not without effort. but you will transform. You will become someone who feels everything and is controlled by nothing. You will become powerful in the truest sense of the word, which is not power over others, but power over yourself. And I'm going to leave you with this. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your sadness. You are the awareness that notices them. You are the consciousness that contains them. You are not the emotions themselves. This is crucial because when you identify with an emotion, when you say, I am angry, instead of, I am experiencing anger, you give it power over your identity. But when you can observe your emotions, when you can say, I notice I'm feeling angry right now, you create separation. And in that space, you are free. You are the general, and your emotions are your scouts. They bring you intelligence from the battlefield of your life. They tell you where you're vulnerable, what matters to you, what needs your attention. And a wise general listens to his scouts. He values their input, but he never lets the scouts command the army. The general commands, the general decides, the general leads, and that general is you. So from this moment forward, remember this. You are not the feeling. You are the one who feels. You are not being controlled. You are being informed. And you have a choice. Not about what you feel, but about what you do with what you feel. And that choice, exercised consistently with wisdom and courage, will change everything. Now, if what I've shared with you today resonated, if something shifted in you, leave a comment and tell me which part hit hardest. Tell me about a time when you responded instead of reacted. I read every single comment. And if you want more of this kind of teaching, subscribe to this channel. Not because I need you to, but because you deserve to remember your own power. You deserve to be reminded that you're not at the mercy of your emotions, that you're not broken. You're a human being learning to master the most difficult battleground there is, your own inner world. So go now. Take what you've learned and practice it. Start today. Notice what you're feeling. Name it. Ask what it's trying to tell you, and then choose how you want to respond. Do this once, and you've started the journey. Do this 1,000 times, and you've transformed your life. Remember, you are not your emotions. You are the awareness that experiences them. You are not being controlled. You are being informed. You are not powerless. You have simply forgotten your power. And my hope is that today, you've started to remember. You've started to reclaim what was always yours. The ability to feel everything and be destroyed by nothing. That's what I want for you. That's what's possible for you. Now go and make it real.